What up, fundraisers? Welcome to the show. My name is Waja, and I am here with Maeve Strathy, Fundraising Strategist at Blakely and the chair of Fundraising Day 2019, and we are here to talk about the fabric of fundraising. Maeve, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mo. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. No, this is going to be good. I mean, as many of you know, my kind of relationship with Maeve has shifted recently as I moved into Blakely. So I've had the opportunity to work with you side by side, see a little bit of what you do, get a little bit of insight into your world and the world of strategy and fundraising. And so, I mean, now that I'm getting a chance to see a bit of that, and now that we're going to be together at Fundraising Day as well, I was curious about kind of the title of the system. What is it? What does the fabric of fundraising mean? What does it mean to be a part of the fabric of fundraising? Like, contextually, what does that mean for the fundraisers out there? And so, I mean, let's start there. Tell me a bit about the fabric of fundraising.
Totally, I'd be happy to. So, every conference needs a theme, or at least that's something we've decided. So that was something that I took some great care to reflect on as I was kind of approaching it. I wanted it to be something that inspired. I wanted it to be real and relevant. And since we want everybody's session on Fundraising Day to connect to that theme in some way or another, directly or indirectly, loosely or really closely, it was really important to me that it work and that it resonate. And so what actually inspired the title in the first place was an experience that I had with a particular client who was kind of sending out these campaigns, and they weren't seeing the same results that they had been seeing the years previous. And so I went into this kind of deep dive of their creative. And as I was looking back on what had worked really well and what was no longer working, I noticed that actually the stuff that had worked really well in recent years was the stuff that was really the basics of direct marketing. That really kind of brought in those best practices, brought in those great fundraising principles. And it made me think about the fact that even though there's been a lot of innovation and progress in our sector, and a lot of things have changed in the way that we do things and the things that work with donors have changed, there's also this really amazing baseline of principles and practices that just work and haven't really changed. And we may have new ideas, but a lot of them are new spins on old ideas. And so initially I wanted the theme to be back to basics, because that's kind of where my head was at the time, and I thought that there was something real about that. But I also didn't like the idea of kind of inspiring the basics, because that has a connotation that I don't quite like. I wanted it still to be inspiring and innovative. But I wanted it to come back to those things that are just tried, tested, and true. And so with the help of some good marketing, we came to the fabric of fundraising. So that was kind of the root of the idea. But then it really evolved from there, because, the moment you talk about fabric, you think about, things that are woven together and things that are tied together. And so it became not just about the principles and practices, but also about the people and the fact that together we make this incredible industry, and we do this incredible work. And it became about, togetherness and community. And so not just the work, but also the people. And it just kind of really took off from there. It doesn't hurt, too, that it's the 25th anniversary of Fundraising Day.
That's true.
Yeah, and that was actually a really, really big kind of surprise in the mix that made it that much more relevant, because it allows us to reflect again on where we were before, where we are now, what's changed, but also what really came to me was how much is the same, and how much we should really get back to that and kind of reroute ourselves in the fabric of fundraising.
Well, see, that's really interesting, because I mean, like, when we think about how fundraising has evolved, it is, I don't know, maybe from my perspective nowadays, so much more of the science of human behavior,
yes.
How people interact, how people think. Whereas, and to be fair, I wasn't there, but when I'm looking back at kind of creative appeals and the way people interact, is as early as like 5 or almost 10 years ago, right? You're looking at things that were so much more couched in just, hey, this is an emotional piece. People have challenges, the environment has challenges, living things of some kind have challenges, and you should, on principle, emotionally give. Whereas now, when you look at the construction of a letter, or the way that we reach out to individuals, or even the artwork that goes into an opening envelope, there's so much more of the kind of science of human behavior, how people look at a piece, where their eyes move, that go into how we develop something. So when you're looking back at the fabric of fundraising, right? If we take it to that quote unquote basic level of
Yep.
where this all began. I mean, I'm curious to see where you see the relationship being between the art and the emotion and the rhetoric that exists within fundraising and the much more scientific approach that you see now.
It's a great question. I think in many ways, the first thing that hits me about that question is that I think the science was always there. I just don't always think we had the language. I mean, even behavioral science. That field is a relatively new field. I don't know how many years it's been around. I mean, I'm sure that some have been delving into it for a long time, but it's really only been in the public conscious, I don't know, for the past 10, 15 years maybe. And so I think we actually, I don't think it's that we weren't doing those things. I think it's that we didn't have the words. But I do think, to your point, that it's become much more sophisticated and that we've kind of started to pull those levers in ways that we never did before. Because now we have the words and we can really dive into those concepts more than we used to. I think there was a lot of kind of gut at play back in the day, so to speak. And certainly I use my instincts a lot when I work as a strategist. But
absolutely.
But I think we're able to do more with that language because we kind of give a little more maybe credibility to our instincts. We have a science to support it. And maybe in all that, it's not that we're doing anything necessarily super differently, but we've got a lot more buy-in, that's for sure, because people understand these concepts, they believe in them, and so they're kind of more quick to take advantage of them. So I think it's still, I think our profession has become professionalized. I think it's kind of, it's there now. There are, there's much more literature about fundraising that lies with that behavioral science concept. But I think I still see more the same as I reflect back on that.
That's interesting. And so, I mean, when you're again coming up with a theme like Fabric of Fundraising, something that takes us back to the kind of origin stories of what fundraising is and was, do you think that in the process of either gaining the language or evolving the scientific aspect, we've lost some of the emotional connection? And the reason I ask is because, I mean, I was having a Twitter conversation, as all good conversations begin, recently with another fundraiser, and one of the things that we were talking about was the kind of copy that goes into a good appeal. And the question became, I mean, do numbers matter? Do statistics matter? How do people think about things? And it seems to me that fundraiser, who is significantly more tenured than I was relying so much more significantly on how they felt about the copy that they were interacting with on a personal level versus myself, who when I was looking at the copy, whether it was from one side or another, was looking at it from the perspective of, well, what tested well with individuals, right? So, and I think we see a lot of that now, that testing, statistics, metrics come a lot into play in terms of how we assess information, content, and concepts. So I don't know, I'm curious as to whether you think, in getting back to the basics of the fabric of fundraising, that we're kind of tapping back into a little of the emotional element that may have been lost as we move in this direction.
Yeah, I think it's a great question and a great point, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. I think, we always have to, watch the pendulum swing from art to science. I was thinking about this a lot lately in relation to digital, because we're kind of talking a little bit more on the, mail, email side of things, but I mean, digital has opened a huge world of possibilities. And on the one hand, it takes like old school direct marketing tactics and just applies them like wildfire. But on the other hand, it's given us some really amazing opportunities. Now, I was talking to a media company who was talking about performance-oriented ads. And so by that, they meant, of course, writing and designing ads to drive conversions. Absolutely, I'm behind that. Conversions or gifts at the end of the day is what we're working for. However, in focusing the language on performance, are we losing story? Are we losing emotion?
Absolutely.
Does it become clickbait? Where it's not really a compelling emotional or even rational appeal. It's just using keywords that are going to get clicks. So it's tricky. I think we need to balance those things, and I think donors, consumers, people are becoming more skeptical because we kind of understand how this machine works, and so we've got to be really careful as we lean into the science. We've got to balance that with emotion, because at the end of the day, we know that philanthropy, giving primarily comes from an emotional place, a values-driven place. So I agree. I think there's a risk of losing some of that as we amp up the science. I think there's also some great things to benefit from the science side, but you just got to watch that balance. And it's something I think about all the time. So there's a lot of truth to it.
And that makes a lot of sense. Now, I mean, I have to ask because you did mention social, so we should talk about social. I mean, social media, digital media in general, and we'll put email aside because email, I think, is a little more of the norm nowadays. But social media specifically is definitely a new weave in the fabric of fundraising. So, I mean, as somebody who works with clients that are doing integrated digital campaigns, who has seen numerous and managed numerous integrated digital campaigns, I don't know that I have a specific question, more like as the debate over the value of social media in terms of your capacity to connect with a community of supporters, derive new donors. I mean, as that conversation evolves, what are your thoughts? I mean, gut reactions instinctually from what you've seen on the value of social and fundraising.
I think the value is, we're only just scratching the surface in terms of what the value is. I think, it always comes back to where are people, what kind of information are they consuming? And how can we as charities, as fundraisers, ensure that what we have to say they're seeing? And just the channels that we're able to reach people on have just multiplied over and over again over the past number of years. It used to just be mail. Get an ad in a newspaper. We have Mo and I share a client, Cancer Research Society, and they've been looking at their archives, and they're celebrating their 75th anniversary next year. And in their archives, most of the ads that they used to do were in newspapers, and there were some really amazing ones. So, you just leverage the channels that you have at your disposal. For a while, it was newspaper, then mail. TV was part of the mix. Radio is still part of the mix and a great supporting channel. But since then, it's just, continued to multiply. And so we need to think about where people are, where they are, what they're engaging with, what they're consuming, and how we can get in front of them. And so I think digital is so important. I mean, you and I are both heavy users of social media personally and professionally. So we know that's the place where most people are going to catch our attention, a little less so than the mailbox, although that's starting to swing with our generation actually, because mail is such a novelty to us. It's actually a decent place for charities to be, which is, we'll see where that goes.
There's a lot of irony in that.
Is it there though? I know, but there's actually a lot of statistics to support that direct mail is a really viable channel for millennials, which is hysterical. But it's true because we don't get much anymore. So that's what it is to me. It's another channel. It has its nuances. There's a lot to learn, especially on the production side of things. I've learned a lot more about the technical because it's critical to understand it. But at the end of the day, it's another channel, and a lot of the same principles and practices apply. You just have to learn those nuances and make sure that you're in front of the donor so that when they're inspired to give, that they're thinking about you, and so that's what it is. But it offers a lot of opportunity that we don't have in the same way with other channels. Mail is a fantastic channel for testing, but it takes a while before you know what won or what lost.
Oh, for sure. Whereas
Facebook advertising is purely based on the idea of constantly in real time optimizing towards what's winning. So there's really amazing things that we can do that we weren't able to before. But once again, and this is going to be my common theme, I'm still amazed by what stayed the same, even with those things. And I think actually I've understood digital fundraising better. First of all, I don't think there's really such a thing as a digital fundraising. It's just fundraising on different channels. But the better I've gotten at fundraising on digital is when I realize it's just fundraising on a different channel. It's not that special, but it's really exciting.
No, and that completely makes sense. I mean, I think that a lot of the time we get caught up in new media and new channels that come out, whereas, I mean, I always say when I talk about storytelling, the story is the story is the story. It's just the medium, how we tell the story, that's changed. And I mean, one of the things that I wanted to ask you right off the bat, because when we're thinking about the fabric of fundraising, I think the first stitch is the story. And eventually I am going to stop beating this theme to death.
Don't,
but but seriously, the first stitch is the story. I feel like that's where we begin when we talk to clients, when we have concepts. It all comes down to what's the story we're telling in an appeal. And so, I mean, from your perspective, because I think in a very real way, although we're getting back to basics with this fundraising day, we are kind of blending the two and seeing where we started even 25 years ago to where we are right now with new ideas and new concepts and the evolution of fundraising. So, I mean, for you, when you think about story, I mean, is the role of story still the same within the fundraising world? And I mean, dare I ask, what do you think makes a good fundraising story?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, to answer your first question about whether the stories are generally the same, yes, I think the core of those stories is still the same. I think the way we've told them has changed a lot, not just in terms of channels, but I mean, everything has changed over the past 25 years. The way we talk about, beneficiaries, victims, that the kind of some of the exploitation we did of stories in the past. I think that's changed a lot. That we're not kind of othering people, and that we're really kind of we're giving power back to the beneficiaries of the work. So I think in those ways, the way we've positioned these stories has changed. But what makes a good story, I think, hasn't really changed all that much. And in my opinion of what makes a great story for fundraising is that it's really got to position the problem in a way that everybody understands. Because donors, at the end of the day, not all donors want to be a hero, not all donors want to be loved, but donors do want to help solve a problem. Big or small. And so stories that really make clear and contextualize that problem are good stories. But those stories also have to give us hope. They have to give us a sense of solution, because donors want to know that they don't want to just know about the problem. They want to know that they can do something about the problem. So I think any story that well positions those two things is key, and that most of them should figure out. It should also position the donor's role in all of this. So any way we can kind of tie a story in together like that, that's really the core of it to me. But of course, there's so much more you can do with stories and different ways you can position them and tell them. But I think if you've got those core elements, your chances are you're going to be successful when it comes to fundraising.
I like that a lot. I mean, at the end of the day, I always find that the story is all, because the story is how we connect emotionally, empathetically as people with the cause or the idea that we're supporting and passionate about. I like that.
Excellent.
But yeah, so what about the day itself? I mean, it's fundraising day, your chair, it's a bit of a different vibe than most of us who are attending or even speaking.
Sure.
So I guess, what are you excited for?
I mean, it's been a load of work. We've been the management team for Fundraising Day and I have been on this for 9 months plus. There's a lot of new members, which has been amazing, but also some people who I've been on the committee with. This is my third year on the committee, and some people have been around since I started, which is so cool. So it's been a lot of work. I think all of us are really excited to see that work come to fruition, because that's what it's been all about, is offering a really great day of learning and inspiration and fun and networking for fundraising professionals. And I think, there's no question in my mind that we will achieve that. So I'm really excited to see everybody enjoy the day. I'm certainly excited to participate in it. It's been such a privilege to be chair, and so to kind of bring this amazing opportunity to people, it has been a pleasure entirely. Pretty excited for beers at Steam Whistle at the end of it all. The after party is essential, because I think there's a lot to celebrate. The fundraisers themselves, the management team that I've worked with, AFP is amazing. I mean, at the end of the day, they're really the ones putting rubber to the road and getting this all going for us. So I'm really excited for the entire day. I'm also really excited about the keynote. We have an amazing woman named Zara Al-Harazi, and she is speaking about her own personal experience going from refugee to entrepreneur and a fundraiser and philanthropist in her own right. It's going to kick off the day with a lot of inspiration, and then we've jam-packed 4 different educational sessions. I mean, there's many sessions, but 4 different time slots during the day for speakers like yourself to share your knowledge with a very captive audience. And I'm really excited about that. In the past couple of years, we've had 3 sessions. We managed to fit in 4. I'm thrilled. It's a one-day conference, the biggest in Canada, if not North America. So we've got a lot to be excited about and proud of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, last question.
Sure.
you have the 25th anniversary of Fundraising Day with you. And that means that what we're bringing to the table is truly decades of experience. And I guess there are so many sessions on a variety of topics that this might be, hard to parse out what the right one is for you. But I mean, from everything you've seen, from being part of the organizational committee to, planning the after party, what's one thing that you hope that people will take away from their experience at Fundraising Day 2019?
That is a great question. One thing that everybody could take away, without really beating the theme too hard, the idea of everybody leaving feeling a little more connected, I think, would be something that I would feel really proud of. I've benefited so much from my connections in this sector up until this point in my career, and have no doubt that they'll take me wherever I go next, and not leaving Blakely, just to be clear. But wherever, as my career evolves, I'm surrounded both at my place of work and also beyond by these incredible connections. And I think most of us feel that way in the sector, but maybe not all of us. And so anybody who kind of goes into the day not necessarily feeling part of something, I hope they leave feeling part of something. And it really does play into that fabric theme very well. But I hope it would feel that way otherwise. I think I find this sector to be incredibly generous with time and ideas. And I hope people feel that they've gotten a little bit more of that from the day.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, friends, fundraisers, that's Maeve Strathy, Fundraising Strategist at Blakely and the chair of Fundraising Day Toronto 2019. Hit us up. Hope to see you there. Our Twitter handles are in the footer of this video, so tweet at us.